Hi guys, before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other reviews of Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist. The long-term goal is to do all of them. Will I succeed? Well, you'll have to stay with the channel to find out. And the other thing I wanted to say today before we dive into it is that there will be spoilers. This movie is over 30 years old. So this is another one from the Night Shift collection. It feels like we are just permanently stuck in Night Shift at the moment. Sometimes They Come Back is one of those fun titles that you can sort of make up your own sequel ideas for. So sometimes they come back again, sometimes they come back for more, sometimes they never come back, and so on. It's a little bit like I Know What You Did Last Summer in that regard. And actually, they did make 2 sequels for this, so we could end up stuck here for a total of 3 reviews before we move on to the next short story. Now, when it comes to the quality of that original short story, I would say that this is a mid-tier effort from Night Shift. There are 20 stories in that collection. I've never tried to rank them before, why would I? But if I had to guess where this would place in Night Shift, if I did do a ranking, I would say this would come maybe 10th or 11th out of 20. It's pretty good. It's actually quite creepy in parts. So when it comes to the story, I'm going to give you a quick outline of how it is in the written work, and then as we go through the review, I'll point out some of the differences that the movie makes and how effective or ineffective those changes are. So what we've got here is a tale about a teacher, but when he was a child he suffered a great trauma because his brother died right in front of his eyes. The two of them were walking around in the city at night somewhere, and they encountered some thugs, and this guy's brother died on the end of a switchblade. He managed to get away, but he was heavily traumatized by the incident, as you can expect. He did eventually get over it to a certain extent. I mean, he got married when he grew up, he got himself a teaching degree, and when this story begins, he's just taken over a classroom full of problem children in his local high school. He's drawn the short straw in terms of which class you get. But one day, and this is not long after the actual story begins, a new kid joins the class who bears a striking resemblance to one of the thugs who was there the night that his brother died. And he tries to just ignore it at first. He thinks he might just be seeing things, but then a couple of weeks later another kid joins the class who resembles one of the other thugs responsible for his brother's death. So he's really smelling a rat at this point, and he decides to do some private detective work. He rings the sheriff's station back in the hometown where his brother was originally murdered, and he finds out that all the thugs from that incident 20 odd years ago, they're all actually dead now. They died in a car crash in the intervening years. So he realizes, to his horror, that these thugs have come back into his life as ghosts, and they're in his class at school just trying to make his life a misery, and eventually they're going to try and kill him because they see him as unfinished business from that incident all those years ago. Like I said, it's quite a creepy tale. The ending is a little bit unsatisfactory, but I was certainly curious to see the movie version, and I really hoped it would turn out to be good, because if it hadn't, then I would have absolutely dreaded covering films 2 and 3, and what they even did for the sequels I've no idea, because this is absolutely a one and done story. One change from the short story is that we are now in a small town instead of a big city, and this mattered to me because I found the whole cityscape atmosphere to be quite effective in the original short. Plus, I always imagined Jim's school, Jim's the main character, I always imagined his school as being like this really tough urban place with like graffiti all over the place, lots of concrete walls. Picture that 90s film. Was it Michelle Pfeiffer who did that film where she's teaching loads of rappers in her classroom? I never even saw that film, so I don't know why it's suddenly coming to mind. As a little aside, why is it whenever you have a horror film with a small family in a small town, you'll often see them moving to that small town right at the beginning instead of just already being based there? For further reading, see Arachnophobia, The Conjuring, Night Swim, Sinister, and there's probably dozens of others, but I just don't see what you gain from that. Why not just have them already living in the town? Another negative upgrade from the short story, which I guess would just make it a downgrade, is that the bullies no longer die in a car crash that we never see. Now they die in the same scene that the little 12-year-old boy dies. So no sooner does he get switchbladed to death, the bullies suddenly panic because a train starts coming. Their car's parked up on some train tracks, but they can't drive away because they've temporarily lost their car keys, and the train bashes into the car and all the bullies die. And this is like barely 30 seconds after this little boy has been knifed to death nearby. Now, I don't like this change because one of the creepiest parts of the short story is when Jim is on the phone to the sheriff and he's having this story relayed back to him about how the bullies drove their car into this telegraph pole and there was a big explosion and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that revelation happening exactly like that. So to have the story altered like this didn't quite work for me. I get why they've done it. They've done the whole show don't tell thing, because in the short story you're told what happened to the bullies, whereas in the film you're just shown their deaths. So there's a logic to the change, but I still don't like it. The size of the bullies in this is absolutely ludicrous. Like, when I was reading the short story, I just pictured a bunch of lads who were like slightly taller than the kids getting bullied. But in this, it's like a bunch of adults bullying a bunch of kids who barely come up to their waist. Now, I looked up the actors playing the three bullies in this, and their ages at the time of filming were 24, 26 and 26. And the two 12-year-old kids, I think one of them was being played by a 15-year-old, and I couldn't find the age of the other one, but whatever. Like, when you put all these actors together, it just looks really silly. It looks like a bunch of mid-20-somethings attacking like a couple of 12-year-olds, and then you've got all these lines of dialogue that just sound silly, like, what are you going to do? Run for mummy? And then that kind of thing. You know, it's like, what do you even need the switchblades for if you're like twice the size of the people that you're bullying? In the classroom scenes, you've got these adults basically trying to squeeze into chairs designed for 13-year-olds, and like, you look at their legs out in front of them, and the legs are struggling not to knock over the chairs in front. As another little aside, why is it that every time you have a group of bullies in a movie, one of them always has neatly combed dark hair and a black leather jacket? It's as if there's some kind of unwritten rule that one in every 3 or 4 film bullies has got to be the evil twin of the Fonz from Happy Days. And in this case, he's the leader. The only positive here is the performance of Tim Matheson in the lead role. He's really busting a gut here to try and make something of this. This name, Tim Matheson, I knew I'd heard of it as soon as I saw it pop up on the opening credits, and yet when he appeared on screen for the first time I didn't recognise his face, and yet a closer inspection of Wikipedia showed me that I had seen him before in things like Magnum Force and Fletch, and no doubt you will have seen him in some things as well, because this guy has had a long career going way back. He's in his late 70s now. The trouble with this film is it tries too hard to be emotional rather than scary, and we're not really here for emotion, are we? It's too soppy, this film. It tries too hard to be like an emotional drama rather than a horror film a lot of the time. It's like it's been softened for TV or something. There's a scene halfway through where Jim is walking round his house in daylight, seeing all these ghosts from his past, like his brother and his parents or whatever. But it's not remotely scary because Jim is not scared, so why should we be? And then at the end of the film we get this conclusion which is just like the end of an episode of Ghost Whisperer, a show that me and my wife used to briefly watch back in the noughties. Had Jennifer Love Hewitt in it. At the end of every episode would feature Love Hewitt trying to push somebody into the light because they were dead and they had no business hanging around on Earth as a spirit anymore. And the conclusion to this film is exactly like that, except we don't have Jennifer Love Hewitt, thus making the whole process pointless to me. But this is substituting for a much better ending that we had in the short story, where Jim holes up in a school late at night and he has to cut two of his own fingers off in order to call up the devil and get the devil to vanquish the bullies. And okay, it wasn't a brilliant ending, but it was still better than this Ghost Whisperer stuff that we get in this movie version. So on the whole, I'm just not massively into what they've done with this. It's too mushy, it's too schmaltzy, it just feels like they've dumbed it down for TV and gotten rid of all the good stuff from the original short story. In its current form, this movie is like something you'd watch with your gran over a TV dinner or something, and your gran would turn round to you and say, "Are you sure you should be watching this?" But with a grin on her face, because she knows full well that this is like one of the softest horror movies any kid could possibly watch. And right now I'm thinking, how do I get out of reviewing the 2 sequels? It's not really possible to call in sick on YouTube, is it? You know, if you're sick, you just kind of do the video when you get better. Right, we're almost at the end of the video. No, I don't own a copy of this, don't be stupid. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and find out how we're going to score this. So we've got 1, 2 bloody axes out of 5. That's probably more than you thought I was going to give it, given that, you know, the review wasn't so hot. But you know what, this is a film that was sort of alright when I was watching it, you know, and then when I started writing things down to plan for the review, then it became like more of a 1 out of 5 movie. But I'm going to go with the score that I was feeling at the time I was watching the movie. So 2 out of 5 for this, and maybe I'll come back for the sequels, maybe. Right. At the time of doing this recording, I'm on 999 subscribers. I think it was 996 when I did my last video, so I've gone up 3 since then. So it stands to reason that this will be the last ever video of the axes. I don't expect we will be seeing these guys ever again. So I think this is time to say goodbye. This is a very sad moment. I've had these things a long time. When I did episode 1 of this, I wasn't doing a score at that point. I think I did the first 2 episodes with no score. And then I think it was episode 3 I started doing a score out of 5. But the axes didn't come in straight away. I think it was like maybe 10 or 15 episodes after that the axes came on board. But even so, I've still been using them for like almost 400 episodes. So, you know, I am going to miss them. I hope they find peace in whatever landfill they end up in over the next week or so. I should bring them all on just to do a little bow for all their hard work on the channel over the years. Go on, give a bow, lads. There you go. So say goodbye. Axe 1 gone. Axe 2, Axe 3, Axe 4, Axe 5. We didn't see you on the channel very often, but when we did, it was usually a really happy day. We had a masterpiece to talk about that day. Goodbye. Oh, and let's not forget this little fella, the half an axe. The amount of times I was stuck between one score or another, and this little fella just helped me out of dodge and just allowed me to find a middle ground. Yeah, we'll miss him as well. So there we go. The axes are no more. And you know what? If I don't have 1 more subscriber by the next video, I'm going to feel like a complete spanner now. So hopefully somebody out there will help me out. Right, we've come to the end of the video. I'll be back very soon with another review. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.